I call this meeting of the San Diego City County Reinvestment Task Force to order at 2 p.m. on February 21st. I'm San Diego County District 2 Supervisor Joel Anderson. I'm pleased to serve as co-chair of RTF with San Diego City Council President Pro Tem, District 4 All-Star Representative Monica Montgomery Stepp. This is the first quarter meeting of the RTF this calendar year. The Reinvestment Task Force is an official joint city and county commission. Its mission is to support greater access to financial resources and to promote economic prosperity. The RTF does this by advocating for affordable housing, small businesses, home ownership, consumer education, financial counseling, and fair access to lending services. Today's meeting provides an opportunity for us to discuss the information that furthers this work. For the record, let's please have each RTF member or their representative introduce themselves by providing their name and organization. We'll go in order in which everyone is listed on the meeting agenda, starting with my co-chair. And if you have muted your microphone, please unmute now.
Thank you so much, Supervisor. Good afternoon, everyone. Council President Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp here as co-chair, and happy to be here.
Does everybody have the list?
They might not have it up yet. I'm happy to.
Daisy, if you wouldn't mind just announce them, because I'm not sure who all's here and who isn't.
Yes, we'll go down the same order that he talked about. So we have our bank representatives first, Pam and Sergio.
Good afternoon, Pamela Gabriel with Bank of America, Senior Vice President, Market Executive for San Diego.
Hello, everyone. Sergio Carroll with Citibank, Market Manager here in San Diego. Thank you.
Ali and Antonio.
Good afternoon, folks. Ali Tarzi with JP Morgan Chase, Corporate Responsibility.
Hey, everyone. Antonio Barbosa with Wells Fargo Bank, Community Relations.
And Angela and then Ricardo.
Hi, my name is Angela Zappia. I'm with Accessity. We're a micro lender, an education provider for small business owners. I'm attending today in lieu of Elizabeth Schott, our CEO.
Ricardo Flores, Executive Director of LISC San Diego.
Thank you. Kelly, I skipped you because I didn't see that you were on the second screen. If you'd like to introduce yourself, and then Adolfo, if he's on yet, followed by Steve.
Yeah. Hi, this is Kelly Flynn. I'm with the International Rescue Committee, Small Business Development Center.
And Steve?
Waiting for Ricardo here. But I'll go ahead. Stephen Russell, San Diego Housing Federation, and my dear colleague, Ricardo.
I guess Ricardo Flores, Executive Director of LISC San Diego.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you went. And Rebecca, thank you for joining us as Peter's alternate. Hi.
Hi, yes, I'm Rebecca Louie. I'm the CEO of Lakeland Housing and Development Corporation, and I'm subbing in for Peter Armstrong.
Thank you. And I can't see, I think Adolfo is the only other member that we're expecting who hasn't introduced himself.
Daisy, he just sent an email saying he is joining shortly. So
perfect. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all for being here today. Our agenda includes presentations about the housing and home ownership outlook in San Diego, an effort known as the City Heights Inclusive Economic Recovery and Resilience Agenda, and the Worth Homeship Equity Project Update. With that, I defer to Council President Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp to proceed to item 2, a non-agenda public comment.
Thank you, Supervisor Anderson. We will proceed with non-agenda public comment at this time. If I would just ask the clerk to provide the instructions for public participation in today's meeting.
If any attendees would like to provide public comment today, they may do so when invited by using the raise hand feature located on the toolbar at the bottom of the Zoom window. Each speaker will be called on in turn. When called upon, please unmute yourself when prompted and provide your comments. Public speakers are limited to 3 minutes per person.
Thank you for that. Do we have any public comments at this time?
There is no public comment at this time.
Okay, appreciate it. And I will turn it over to Supervisor Anderson.
I'm sorry. We'll now begin with item 3 on our agenda, which is task force member comments. Because we're on Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature if you'd like to make a comment. I don't see any hand. Oh, Mr. Russell, what would you like to say?
Well, thank you. I don't like to miss an opportunity to address such a wonderful collection of folks here. I just wanted to call attention to the fact we had our second, the San Diego Housing Federation has been working with a number of partners on a property management school classes, first through Maricosta College and now through Southwestern College. We just began a cohort, and soon, perhaps as soon as the fall, we're going to begin at the ECC with San Diego Community College District. And this is a 16-week course now that we've developed that is going to train folks to have fundamental skills that will make them hireable within the property management sector in affordable housing. We're really pleased to right now be working with support from Merit Capital, from Union Bank, and some others. But we're just excited about the program, and I'd like at some point in a future agenda, perhaps in 6 months or so, to give a more full report of some of the outcomes that we've had.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have a comment or question? With that, let's now proceed to the approval of the minutes.
Thank you. Just entertain a motion at this time to approve the minutes from the, I believe it's October 20, 2022 regular meeting of the RTF.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second. Okay, I think we have a motion by Supervisor Anderson and a second by Mr. Barbosa. All in favor, say aye.
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 Do we have any opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye.
Okay, we got everybody for an aye, except one extension. All right, thank you so much for that. And so that item passes unanimously with one abstention.
Moving on to our staff report from RTF Manager Daisy Crompton. Daisy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Supervisor. Good afternoon, everyone. Short report. The main thing that we're working on right now is the homeownership equity project, which is still in its startup phase. There's a lot of activity ramping up, and we'll do an update during item 9. I did participate last week in meetings with the Federal Reserve, which included discussions with their economists, all with an equity lens about their growth and inflation forecasts. It was a chance also to meet a fellow board member who's executive director of the South LA Promise Zone and talk to her about collective impact project management, which is useful for the Worth project. And more interesting, I reached out to local workforce development counselors to gather information that could be shared with the policymakers at the Fed. And of course, a recurring theme is inflation. The continued challenges around childcare as well, combined, are making low-wage jobs just not pay off. This is not news to us. People are literally losing money going to work, and even more than ever, the work doesn't pay enough to cover their expenses. So as a result, as we're hearing in the news, credit card debt levels are rising, savings are falling. Although if you dig into the numbers below the headline, which I tried to do a bit, these numbers are still better than they were before the pandemic, but the trend is worrisome, right? We don't want to go back to that. People are starting to get back to where they were before the pandemic in terms of financial stress, and that's not good. We're also seeing people, working people turn to food pantries and utility assistance, which we've heard about. Our workforce participants are responding by seeking ways to increase their income through either additional hours or jobs, as well as exploring new skill sets for higher paying positions, upskilling. They're also looking for work from home jobs, which is something that we had been hearing through the pandemic. That continues because of the flexibility it allows family members, individuals, and workers. And I'll sort of close with the inability and this expense of people being able to get to work is impacting employers, right? So everything from hiring to absences. And this means there are wide ripple effects in the current moment. It's not just about vulnerable populations, it's about businesses too. So I am sure we will hear more in the coming months, sadly, but also good news about workforce retraining and the like. That's the staff report.
Supervisor, you're muted.
You know, I'm trying to be very considerate so you don't hear me chewing. And thank you, Daisy. I really appreciate it. Do we have any questions or comments from RTF board members? I don't see any hands, so I'm going to move on. Let's now hear from our guest speakers. Please hold all comments and questions until the end of the presentations.
Supervisor, I just want to move to item 6 really quick. Can we do that one really quick before I think that's on the agenda next before we get to the presentations? Just vote on the calendar quickly.
Sure, be happy to.
Okay, so the remaining RTF meetings of this year, if voted on today, will be held on May 25th at 2 p.m., June 29th at 1 p.m., and October 12th at 1 p.m. And so this year was a priority to have both co-chairs present at our meetings. So thank you in advance for understanding the schedule this year to all the RTF members. And we also invite you to provide agenda item topics to our staffs or to Daisy. I look forward to uplifting the work of our task force members around economic development and home ownership. And if there, we can have discussion. I will also entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
In a second. Okay, great. Any further discussion on this one? All right. Seeing no hands, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor say aye.
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 All right, any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, great. The motion passes unanimously, and I will turn it back over to Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome our first guest speakers, Darren Houston, who has presented to this task force before and is part of the Worth Homeownership Equity Project Collaboration. Darren is part of the San Diego chapter of Realist for Democracy and Housing, and is also known as the NAREB San Diego. Today, Darren's going to provide an update on the impact of rising mortgage interest rates on the residential real estate market in our region. Darren, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see some familiar faces. Thank you for this opportunity to join you today and to speak on what we're doing here and experiencing in San Diego. You know, I'm a practitioner. I'm a mortgage banker. I've got an office in Carlsbad with a very close friend of mine who we've known each other for 25 years. We primarily do 40% of our book of business is new construction and renovation type of financing. Over the last several years, I've focused my attention on first-time homebuyer programs and down payment assistance programs, trying to bridge the gap. If I change my background here in my phone, you're seeing NAREB as the forefront, but it could be Caliber Home Loans, it could be VA representing veterans here in town. But I think the cause is the same. How do we get information to consumers? How do we help consumer confidence, take that first step and take that leap of faith? I have to say that in my 25 plus years of lending experience, now there are so many more programs that are allowing access to credit that we didn't have 10, 12, 15, 20 years ago. As we look at from mortgage lending, if we talk about mortgage lending in general over the last, 2020 and 2021 were anomalies with interest rates so low, doubling the amount of volume. In 2022, every banker on this panel here can attest to the volume just dropping off of the cliff, and we saw enormous amount of companies downsizing their workforces in terms of practitioners. You saw programs and pricing kind of went away. You saw just the consolidation of the industry, and only the highest, most professional loan originators are still in the business. Everyone who was doing refinances and only focusing on refinances are now in either some other industry or pivoted themselves. So I think everyone has pivoted as to the marketplace. There's some definite concerns that we face. We face affordability with affordability is on the decline with rising house prices and rising interest rates. I think that as you saw the end of 2022, where interest rates were at 8% and above, now they're coming to high 6s and low 7s, and we talk about pivoting. We talk about how do we position that as a lender? How do we help consumers have confidence? And we all have said, well, this is only temporary. In Q3, Q4 of next year or the end of this year, interest rates should change and we'll immediately refinance you. That's one perspective. You're seeing a lot of not seller concessions, not necessarily price reductions, but you're seeing more of a seller concession towards closing costs to help with industry buy downs, to buy your interest rate down for a period of 1, 2. You're seeing institutions putting in 1.5 and half buy downs or things to assist with buyers so that they can afford, begin to afford that. But again, that goes with education. The biggest barriers that we face as an industry is for consumers and buyers is really the amount of down payment and how long especially it takes a person to save for their down payment to come in. And the myth of you need 20% down, is not the reality. And the truth is first-time home buyers are so cumbersome. That's a myth. That's not the reality as well. As the San Diego Housing Commission and CalHFA and all the lenders on this call, it might take a little bit more work to process a first-time home buyer or a down payment assistance program. However, that's not something that's insurmountable or that can't be accomplished. And when you talk with the real estate community, I'm on that executive board with the Worth Project, and one of our tasks is to try to inform and get involvement from our real estate community. That means talking to the SDAR, the San Diego Association of Realtors, PSAR, North County, and getting real estate agents involved in this process. Because when someone has a listing opportunity and they see an offer come in, the offer price might be the same. However, you've got this 20% down payment or 20% down payment with one person, and then you've got this either a VA for example, or a down payment assistance program. It doesn't make them less worthy of making a strong, viable offer. I think the education on the real estate agent side needs to move forward. And that's a part of what we're doing on this task force. That's a part of what we do as NARAB in terms of trying to bridge the gap of democracy and housing and bringing education. There's so many people on this panel that we've had this ongoing conversation of how do we create momentum and bring people forward? And really, it's about knocking down these myths and being vocal and present with, here are the different programs that can assist you, and being consistent with that. I will say, since we began this task force, there has been a community collective focus on the same issue, where we're talking with city council, where we're talking with all these different groups who independently have the same conversation, but now we're having a collective voice. And I think that is going to help San Diego. That is going to help these individual groups all come together with what we possibly can do to push the needle to bridge the gap. So, we can deal with these other challenges of student loan debts, and now we have loan level pricing adjustments, which was changed, is going to help us with some people that might have a 630 or 640 credit score and not be priced out of their interest rate or not be priced out of their mortgage insurance, where people can take advantage of the way they are in the market. So, in a nutshell, I would say, we're beginning to see people, buyers, consumers come back to the market and begin to ask the questions that they fear the most. What do I do? Where do I start? How do I begin? It's an easy conversation when interest rates are at 3% or 3.5%. This is where you are. But what you saw in 2023, you saw 40 to 50% of the potential consumers move away from the market when rates went to 7 and 8% because of affordability. Instead of affording a $600,000 property, they're affording a $380,000 or $410,000 property, and that's a very big difference, a differential that we're trying to help people overcome. So I don't want to say I'm preaching to the choir, because everyone knows these struggles. However, I am grateful that we, like I said, have this collective force to bring awareness, and hopefully, as Daisy and I and everyone else on that executive group, we're trying to bring this information to the consumer, and we're trying to figure out what's the best way to do that so people know where to go and begin that process. Even if it's an 8-month gestation or 24-month, or if you're ready right now, at least get them in position to change their mindset of, these are the little things I need to do to prepare myself and be ready. And at the same time have that thought process of, I can buy a home. It is in my foreseeable future. It is attainable. So I think that's really where we are as practitioners and where we are as an industry, of trying to bring information to the consumers so they can feel comfortable about the decisions that they're making to move forward. So thank you again, everyone, for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions. We can get as granular as you like.
Darren, outstanding presentation. I have a quick question for you, and I apologize. Everybody on this call probably knows the answer but me. You'd mentioned buying down the interest rate.
Yes.
Why are banks helping people buy down the interest rate as opposed to just giving them a lower interest rate?
Great question. Great question. You're really talking about the bond market, and you're talking about the way the economy is. If the cost of money is so high, there's no profit. There's nothing in there in terms of the cost of money to reduce it. So in order to offset that, you could do a permanent buy down where a person pays X dollars to have a set lower interest rate. But what you're seeing now you're seeing temporary buy downs where they're either a 3-2-1 or 2-1. And there's a cost for that. The differential between the note rate of, say, 7 and 2% below that is 5. And so what we're seeing and what we're educating real estate agents and the consumers are, rather than taking a $20,000 price reduction on a property, try to receive a $20,000 seller concession to help pay for that, that either temporary or permanent buy down, which goes to the affordability factor. Granted, from a qualification standpoint, on a temporary buy down, we're qualifying them at the higher rate. But there's a period of a 2-year period that they could have a lower interest rate as we're in this higher inflationary time with higher interest rates. And when the rates do change, when they start to level off, we can refinance them. And there's no money lost. It's to the buyer's advantage. If they refinance or choose a lower interest rate during that 2-year period, for example, then there's a refund for that upfront money, like if it were an escrow account for your taxes and insurance. So it's a win-win for the consumer in this time. When I started in 1993, Greenspan was the chairman of the board and interest rates were 8.5%. I didn't know any better, but that's what I was selling was 8.5% cost, of interest rates. So for those who have been accustomed to, lower interest rates, it's been a shock for many, been a real shock. So
I'm old enough to remember the Carter years. 8% was a good deal.
That was a good rate.
So when I'm thinking, based on what you said, when I'm thinking about this, essentially what they're doing with fixed rate is what they used to do with ARMs, right? You have the adjustable initial rate, and then maybe you have a cap down the road. So they're essentially using that same technique, but towards fixed.
Absolutely. And it's that same technique. Now, from a bond perspective on a 10-year treasury yield, there's not much difference with a 5/1 ARM where you're fixed for 5 years and then you turn into an adjustable every 1 year, or a 7-year or a 10-year ARM in comparison to 30-year fixed rates. So meaning if I'm originating a loan, there's not much difference in the interest rate on a short-term ARM versus a 30-year fixed rate. Many people would just prefer to deal with a 30-year fixed rate. Now, not to date ourselves, but as we talk about adjustable rate mortgages, you might remember the coffee loan or the LIBOR loan, where it was a pure adjustable tied to the London Interbranch offering rate or the cost of fund index here in the western part of the States. Those types of products don't exist any longer. We're really in a 30-year fixed rate environment with some intermediate short-term ARMs. Good and bad. Good and bad, how that equates to. With lower interest rates, it's not a harmful thing. As rates go high, you don't have choices. And even if you chose an interest-only 30-year fixed rate, that's interest only for the first 10 years, there's not a huge, yes, there's a difference in the monthly payment because it's interest only, but not a huge difference in the overall note rate. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Darren. Does anybody have a question or comment? I don't mean to monopolize Darren's time. I don't see any. Thank you so much for that presentation.
Absolutely.
Oh, Daisy, I see your finger up. I'm not muted.
Supervisor, I just have my hand up real quick.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay, no problem. And also, I think there's a public comment. I just wanted to say, Darren, thank you so much. It's good to see you online. I also wanted to just point out also that when you're talking about preparing potential buyers, that, in District 4 right now, we're one of the only places in San Diego that are able to still build what we now call affordable in this day and time, single family homes and an opportunity for folks to own. And so those will be coming online in the next couple of years. So it might be a good time to bring the task force out and start educating folks on the fact that this can be a possibility for them. I would really like to start trying to do that in the community. So we will be in touch about that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. I believe you're all going to be speaking with Rick Manalo next. Rick is a partner of mine, and we sat down and we looked at the income scale of your 80% AMI here in San Diego. We kind of did some backwards math, and then he showed me in the price point of these potential borrowers. Currently, there are 250 homes on the market that fit that criteria of that price range. So it's not I guess the idea is it's not completely unobtainable. There are homes there. You just have to, really have an acute eye. But yes, we would love to, going down the road further, try to help create opportunities for home buyers, and love to be at the table to facilitate that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm going through a script here. Do I need to ask for public comment on this item? Or are we good with, is there any public comment?
We have one public comment at this time from Gloria Baker.
Yes.
Gloria, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just did. Thank you. How are you? Hi, Darren. Just a quick question. My computer spazzed for a second while you were talking. The project is the Worth project, or what's the name of it again?
Yeah, it's the Worth Initiative. I'll send you a direct link through the San Diego Housing Commission. We were one of 8 cities of 25 that were invited that won a grant from Wells Fargo to help move 5,000 BIPOC homeowners into homes over a 4-year period. And we just are beginning, that process. It's been a 10, 11-month process, and majority of the people that are on this panel are a part of that executive group. But yeah, we're really excited about this project and really excited about, bringing awareness and having the opportunity to move that needle here in San Diego and be a part of that grant process. So yeah, I'll send you the direct link, Gloria, when we're finished.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Monica?
Thank you so much. And thank you again, Darren. We're going to move on to item number 8 now and talk about the City Heights Inclusive Economic Recovery Agenda. Want to welcome our longtime task force member, Ricardo Flores, and I'll just have a couple of opening remarks. Ricardo will be presenting about a 3-year action plan LISC has undertaken to support equitable economic recovery and development in City Heights, and its anticipated expansion into the Diamond District, which we're super excited about. So Ricardo, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, so let me get my stuff here, and I can share my screen, I think, right? So basically, first thing we just want to say is it's good to see everybody here. So Kaiser, several years ago, started a process where they were investing in certain communities, and in San Diego, they wanted to invest in City Heights, and specifically with economic development. How do we support small businesses, essentially? And really, for us, economic development it's Friday night. You and your family have a choice to go somewhere to eat dinner. We want you to come to the neighborhoods that we're working in, because you're going to spend your money in those neighborhoods, and that's going to be good for the small businesses, but it's going to be good for the neighborhood as well. But you have to have a reason to come into those neighborhoods, right? There has to be something you're looking for that you can't get anywhere else in San Diego. And so for the work that we were doing in City Heights, obviously it's sort of capitalizing on the City Heights community and the diversity that's there. And we put together this plan here. Kaiser provided us about $75,000 to put together a plan, and then about $200,000 to implement this plan. And again, the idea here was to bring the community together so that they could make decisions on what this plan looked like. And I won't go through the whole thing, but it's a pretty strong plan. There's a lot of moving pieces to it. And then there was about $200,000 or so to actually implement this work. Currently, we are in the 2nd year of this plan. And so we are at this point entertaining strategies or opportunities for the $100,000 that's left over. And this, again, is a community process with the stakeholders in this neighborhood to do this. And again, right, as you can see, we have some very strong goals here that we want to fulfill. And really, I bring this up because this is exactly the same thing we're interested in now doing in the Diamond bid. The community, Kaiser, I should say, has now said, hey, look, we want to also continue this effort, and we want to do this work more intentionally in the Diamond District. And so part of that plan, again, comes with about $75,000 to hire somebody to put together a plan like we saw. We've already selected folks from the community to be a part of this. So if there are other folks that are interested, let us know. But we put the first kind of stakeholder group together. The council member's office was definitely a part of that, and others in the community. And again, the idea is to come together create an economic development plan, and then the $200,000 or so that's also being provided by Kaiser will be used to fill that plan in, to make that plan a reality. And then the other thing too that we're also going to be doing and interested in doing is leveraging those monies from additional stakeholders to, again, implement this plan that the community is interested in seeing fulfilled. And so that's one of the things that once we put that plan together, we're going to be out there talking to folks and other groups that say, hey, we're interested in District 4 and what's happening in those neighborhoods. And then, of course, Council Member Montgomery Stepp and her team have put together the Black Arts and Cultural District that we feel should definitely be a part of this, because it is something that is coming forth. And again, the idea being it's Friday night. We want you and your family to go to District 4, to the Black Arts and Cultural District, to spend your money. But the question becomes, what are you spending it on and why are you going there? And again, there's no shortage of entrepreneurs or individuals that can share that culture, especially the culture of District 4, and kind of bring that forward. And this is something that's happening all over the country. My colleagues in LA are seeing this with what they call Destination Crenshaw, the Crenshaw Boulevard, which historically has been a Black and Japanese community, and how they're now actually putting teeth to that program in terms of ensuring that small businesses are able to stay there, whether that's creating co-op opportunities or investments in these small businesses there. One of the things I think we're also interested in exploring is how do we provide commercial ownership opportunities to small businesses. So it's not enough that, we can say, great, we're going to put a small business here, or a small business is interested in opening a store in this neighborhood, but how do we actually provide ownership to that small business so that there is no threat of gentrification, that they have to leave because the building is being sold, or the owner of the building doesn't want to continue to provide an opportunity for this small business. And so I think that's something we've already identified. Small Business CDC has a loan called Empower Loan. It's about $250,000 to $3 million, 5% down, targeted to LMI neighborhoods and LMI businesses. And so we're going to be trying to raise some grant dollars of that 5%, because again, without having the wealth building part of the economic development, then are we just setting businesses up for failure? Because will somebody come by later, the owner of the business or of the building, and say, you know what, I enjoyed having you here, but you need to move on. And again, that's not in the spirit of what we're trying to do in the neighborhood. So I think that's a really important piece to this. And we look forward to working with the council member. And then lastly, I'll just say this. I mean, at this point, what we've seen is when we get a group like Kaiser that comes into a neighborhood and says, look, we want to do more, we want to be as helpful as possible. Our goal at LISC is to then leverage that support with other organizations in the community, whether they're small businesses, whether they're philanthropic. But as all of us know who work with the philanthropic space, it's always the first funder. Once you get that first funder in there, it does create a wake that allows others to say, you know what, we also want to be in this neighborhood. But it's always that first funder that's the most important funder to get in the community. And again, I think about this. I know that there was, I think it's been 6 months, maybe over a year. There were 2 separate articles in the Union Tribune on a Sunday that identified the community in Diamond District that said, I think these women were painting a mural on a wall that said, we want a bookstore, we want a coffee shop. Just actually painting economic development on a wall. That's how badly they want it. And then there was another article that highlighted an individual who was working on an arts location, an arts business. Again, how do we create those spaces and those environments, and really, again, provide people an opportunity to do what they do best, which is they know their culture, and how can they commoditize that culture in order for all of us to enjoy that culture, and again, to create a space where we can do that. And then the final thing I'll just say is, as we see communities change over time, I like to highlight one little interesting community, Kensington, only because we all kind of know Kensington has that storefront with a movie theater and all those stores. It's been there for years now. But if you talk to people who live in Kensington 50 years now, what they'll tell you is those stores were handy person store, handyman store, pharmacies, banks, and those have all morphed now. Now we're talking about restaurants and bars and Pilates studios and different things like that, ice cream places, right? The nature of what we spend our money on in the economy has changed. And so now we're seeing that change. And so how, again, do we reflect that within communities and again, ensure people have other options? It's not cliche, but there's got to be other things besides the beach in San Diego, and we want those tourists to experience that, because without that, then that doesn't make us as rich. And then lastly, I'll say this. I went to Chicago years ago, and I went to this Mexican American museum that was there, and it was really a very cool experience, and I believe it was in a Latino community. But after my wife and I left the museum, there was nothing there. There was no coffee shop. There was no restaurant. There was no place for us to sort of digest what we had seen. Frankly, there actually wasn't anything there at all. It was just the building and then residential everywhere. And again, how do we provide a space for people to understand that? And I think about Chicago, because there's a lot of things in Chicago that I was interested in seeing, but we weren't aware of it. We weren't aware that this was this type of a neighborhood servicing these types of food, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what we want to do. We want to provide another level of opportunity, internal tourism and external tourism, for people to have different opportunities in San Diego, and through that to understand the complexity of our community. So we're really excited to do that with the council member's office and others, and we look forward to sharing our progress. Any questions?
Well, thank you so much, Ricardo. Again, I remember our conversation about this. I was in the airport trying to hear what you were saying because it was so exciting. We're looking forward to this, and we know that it doesn't happen overnight, but that, this is something that our community has been longing for, have had hopes up high for decades about the potential, and still see the potential and have hope for the potential. So this is one step forward. So thank you for everything you're doing, and just know that we are super dedicated to this as a top priority in the next 4 years that I have. And so before I see Stephen's hand up, but before I go, I just want to tap into public comment very briefly, and also just make a quick announcement that the last item Rick was supposed to present with Darren. So I'm going to ask Rick, if you're still on, to just hop over, if Daisy doesn't mind, to add your update as part of the Worth update. I think it would fit in there. I think we'll be okay with that, if everybody is good with that. It's okay, so good. We'll go to public comment at this time.
We have one public comment. Jeff Waiter, if you would like to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and provide public comment.
Great. Thank you, Ricardo. Way too much to kind of unpack there, because it's sort of the theory of everything in terms of community redevelopment. But there's just a couple of things that I think I'd like to hit on, and maybe we can follow up on. In the first part of it, and for people who don't know me, I'm part of a group called Neighbor for a Better San Diego, and we spent a lot of time looking at, in particular, redevelopment of our commercial corridors, which is, I think, a big part of this. And you hit on one thing, which is, if we're successful in redeveloping, Elkhorn Boulevard, and I call Elkhorn Boulevard the most important street in America, because we have an opportunity to do kind of greenfield infill, if you will, and bring communities together. So I think it's super important in that regard. But let's say we're successful, all the local businesses that are on Elkhorn Boulevard today, you hit it on the head. We don't want those businesses going away. And so, we would be interested in learning more about strategies to prevent commercial gentrification. We spent a lot of time on housing gentrification and displacement, but the business part of it, I don't think comes up nearly enough. And so that's one thing perhaps to follow up on. The other part of it, I think, is there's a general absence in our community plan updates around this kind of economic development, and just things like, should we reimagine the footprint of our streets so that rather than having our districts be on the main thoroughfares, can we put them on a side street? Can we change things to one-way streets? Can we narrow them? Can we turn them into, green them up? And it would be fantastic if we spent a lot more time on the neighborhood aspect. I mean, housing is super important, and everybody gets that, but the community part of those plans is what really makes it, makes our neighborhoods better. And that's sort of a rambling response to sort of a lot of really good stuff that you laid out there, but good presentation. I will say, I think it's too bad that this meeting is at the same time as the housing action package, because I think this is a equally important thing that everybody should be paying attention to.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for participating and joining us in this meeting. And so well, let me turn it over to Stephen and Ricardo. Of course, if you have any responses or comments, feel free to say those at any time.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Ricardo. I really appreciate the work that you're doing there. And my heart is my start is in economic development, and so Mr. Huter talking about Alcohol Boulevard is also very close to my heart. I agree. It is the heart of a solution for this region in terms of housing, just the potential there, what's there versus what could be there. And I've also seen how North Park has changed, being with since 1996 in redevelopment and economic development here, how many of the pioneers are no longer with us because for the very reasons that were stated, as they were priced out. They made their investment, weren't able to buy the property, and they've been displaced. We're in the third generation of owners actually here since revitalization began. So all that is just to acknowledge the truth and depth of the challenge here. I would ask just very, very narrow particular questions in terms of economic development. Childcare. One of the things that I have seen studies that show that businesses near childcare actually have an aura effect, a glow effect from childcare being there, where the parents drop their kids off or pick them up, that then they can conduct their other errands, etc. Have you looked at that in terms of a focus area in any of the communities?
We not necessarily. I don't know if it's in the City Heights plan, but I think it's a good point to consider putting it in the Diamond District plan for sure. I know there's conversation being had about how can you co-locate affordable housing and other how can you co-locate childcare and affordable housing buildings and other things like that. But no, I think that's a great point. And, one of the things about childcare that when we have looked into a little bit is a lot of the issues that we have to think about are at the state level, especially like for outdoor playing and all of that. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a very, very important issue.
Okay, thank you so much. Agreed. There's so much that we can do. So that sweet spot of having a viable community, but also keeping it about the people that are in the community, as opposed to folks coming in. We know that is always going to be an issue in any part of our great state, let alone our region, and District 4 in particular. So we'll just try to mitigate that as much as we possibly can moving forward. But thank you again, Ricardo, for the presentation and for your active participation here with us. I think that wraps up the item. If there's nothing else, and I'll turn it back over to the supervisor.
Thank you very much. Our last item is on today's agenda. Daisy will provide a progress report about the 4-year Worth homeownership project that RTF is leading. Whenever you're ready, Daisy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Supervisor. Council member referred to maybe picking up the earlier item with the real estate updates. And so if our clerks can see Rick and if he's still here and bring us over, Rick, with apologies, I wonder if you could share what you were going to share, and we'll finish up that and sort of put everyone back in that residential real estate space again, and then we'll do the Worth update.
Thanks, Daisy. Yeah, Darren invited me to talk a little bit about the real estate market. I've been in the business for 40 years, founder of a couple of the nonprofits here, housing in San Diego, ARIA San Diego, it's the Asian Real Estate Association of America. And so when Darren and I was talking, I was like, how do we get the market back? And I think a lot of it is education. We ran some of the San Diego Housing Commission grants in some of the first-time home buyer programs out there. And we found that a lot of it pertains to the market that we're currently in. And so I got a dog in the, hold on. So what we found was a percentage of the market. Sorry about that. A percentage of the market fits into this first-time home buyer grant program and buyer assistance program. But what we're finding out with the real estate professionals is, well, the last 2 years, 2020 and 2021, the market was crazy, and so they really focused on low-hanging fruit or qualified buyers and qualified sellers. Now the market has changed with interest rates being as high as it is, and inventory being as low as it is as well. Currently, there's less than 3,000 homes in the San Diego County market that's for sale. That includes attached condos and townhomes and single-family homes. If you look back in 2018, there was like 8,000 homes available for sale, and so every year it's dropped. And I think part of the reason is because the rates are higher now. If you look at people with interest rates that currently own homes, 65% of them have rates less than 6%. Less than 4%. And so a lot of them are like interest rate locked, and for them to move up, they need to be incentivized to buy something. As Darren mentioned, with the buy down, a 2-1 buy down, or a buy down on the interest rate. But the other part is like, how do we get them moved up? And so with this San Diego Housing Commission grants, we worked out there's over 250 homes, which is less than 10% of the homes available for first-time home buyers, and it gives them such a promise to home ownership. And I think the biggest thing is, belonging to some of these nonprofits is the education of the consumers and how do we get out there. And I think that's kind of the challenge is how do we put together a program that reaches out into the community. A lot of the programs that you guys have at this point is great, but it's like, how do you reach out to the community with that? And know that my group, we're about 50 agents. We're trying to put together something we're spinning as the San Diego Real Estate Stimulus Program. And it's just a combination of all the first-time home buyer programs, grants, and things like that, to make it simple enough so that the consumer understands it, but then find a vehicle to bring it out into the public. Because I don't think too many people know what's available for them. And so as far as the market's concerned, the market is actually pretty good. It's still a seller's market, but there is opportunities for buyers now since it's slowed down, quite considerably. And I think us as real estate professionals have to be educated and have to educate the consumer what's available out there. And right now, because the market is the way it is, a lot of us have decided not to educate themselves. They say 30% will leave the market. 30% of real estate agents will leave the market in 2023. And so the ones that stay are the ones that are interested in helping the community. And I think it's our job to inform the community some way. And maybe with the help of these programs and advertising them in a way that the consumer can understand them. A lot of it's going through social media is, I think, one of the ways to bring that out there. Any questions? I kind of jumped around a little bit.
No, that was fantastic. Okay, yes, sorry. I have a question, but Sergio, please.
Yeah, thank you, Daisy. And Rick, thank you so much for your time today, and Darren as well. Rick, I think you mentioned a very good statement regarding the educational component, more aligned with the real estate practitioner. I think when you started off, you mentioned that real estate agents were really focusing on the low-hanging fruit. Not that these programs, first-time homebuyer programs, down payment assistance programs, are difficult, but at times the practitioners tend to focus more on the programs that are more streamlined, right? The programs that will have less contingencies, less, a shorter turn time in processing. Are there any additional things that through this program, through this initiative, that will be focused more on practitioners understanding more of these programs. Obviously, we have the challenge of working with consumers, but more along the lines of what NARAB and ARIA are doing to really empower the practitioners to feel comfortable with these programs, so that instead of these programs being perhaps best kept secrets, they're really in the forefront of practitioners.
Yes.
Sergio, I can answer that. Rick, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the tasks that I've been tasked to do with the Worth Project is to reach out to our local boards of realtors and try to establish a relationship where we're bringing this information and educational process to the members, so that the members can come to the local boards, receive this information, and that can then go out into the community. I think right now we have these individual associations, ARIA, NAREB, who are doing that work, but the collective boards, we don't have that true dialogue or interaction quite yet, even though, you know, I know that SDAR, PSAR are supportive of the cause. It's just a matter of putting something in place to make it accessible and easy for everyone involved.
I agree. A lot of the programs, if you look at the sheets that are available, the qualifying sheets, a lot of them are, you know, they seem confusing unless you really take the time to understand them. And as a realtor, you depend on your lender to go over it with you. But, you know, real estate people are salespeople typically. You know, education is not always the top priority. It's like, how do I get my next deal? But if you can show, you know, the programs are actually as simple as they are, and show that the process isn't as lengthy as, you know, we imagine them to be. You know, it could be a 30-day escrow. It's just, you know, getting all your ducks in a row. So education to the real estate community, both lenders and into the realtors, is important. And then it makes it easier for us to share it with the community. Because if we're confused about it, the community is even more confused about it.
I love that line. If we're confused about it, the community's even more confused. That's so true. And Sergio, to your question, and Darren spoke about the reach out that he's doing. When we talk about the Worth program in a minute, two of the strategies are related to creating, training, vetting a trusted network of real estate professionals who understand all of these programs, understand the first-time home buyer, and we help equip them to do that as well. So we're, you know, you teed it right up. Thank you. My question to Rick and Darren, if you have anything to add, you know, during the go-go months recently, our buyers were getting squeezed out by investors, right? A lot of mom and pops, as well as, you know, institutional isn't so big in this market. And I always say, you know, that the lower homeownership rates are self-sustaining, right? Whether if that's within a family or a cultural group, because there aren't the mentors to help people increase their home ownership, but also as investors buy these properties, they're taking them out of the market, right? And so I'm wondering if at this point, the market has slowed down a little bit, but has anyone seen the numbers of what's happening at that lower end in terms of investors? And are we still seeing that activity? Because those are a lot of like all cash folks who aren't affected by the interest rates.
We just went to a seminar with a company that buys and sells homes, and they're listing, of course, it's off market, a home every day, right? And some of the homes that they buy, they'll fix and they'll flip. Other homes are selling it off market, and so that off market availability isn't available to the public. But there are some great deals out there for the public if they're connected to some of these companies that buy and sell these homes. Yeah, but as far as like the market is concerned, we just had one buyer competing against 18 offers. in Spring Valley. And so, it is still a seller's market. I think just because the inventory is so low, I think buyers are now seeing that, the rates aren't really that bad, compared to, like the last 5 years of interest rate. And like Darren says, you can buy down the rates and have a rate almost similar to what the rates were about 2 years ago, 5% rate. So I think it's just the mindset. People have to realize that there's opportunity there. And if they wait too long, they're going to miss out because, once everyone figures it out, then you're going to start to see a big buying frenzy again.
And to add, you speak about institutional buyers coming in and buying blocks of homes. My company, for example, Caliber, we've created a few pilot products where we are targeting these fix and flip offices where you have people buying 10, 20, 30, 40 units a year. So we have created commercial lending product in a residential aspect to where we're providing either construction money for a project if they've done 4 or 5 projects in the last year, or the fix and flips with the intent to do the takeout permanent financing when those properties are ready, when they come to market. So I would say, understanding this institutional buyer, banks, mortgage lenders, we are trying to cater something to tap into that market as well. It's separate from residential and it's separate from the first-time homebuyer pool, but it is an attempt to try to keep that more of a residential spirit versus an institutional buyer coming up and buying, 100 homes or 2 blocks of homes. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you, gentlemen. We really appreciate it. And I know I'll be talking to you guys a lot.
Thank you.
So flipping over to the Worth update that was promised, and I'm going to backtrack a bit. We've talked about it in each of the meetings, but Ms. Baker's comments showed me that there is so much information out there for everybody that we always want to level set and make sure everyone's on the same page. So the Worth project is we've named it in San Diego, the Homeownership Equity Collaboration. It was seeded by a planning process grant from Wells Fargo and then a national grant that our collaborative won from Wells Fargo, awarded through the Housing Commission to collaboration partners who will be building out the services. There is a lot of confusion, so I'll clarify it right here. The grant that we got and that we announced in September is not a consumer grant. There is no Worth grant available for consumers, but we will be building out new products, new services, and the like through the collaboration. So, even as this real estate market changes, we are ramping through the startup phase of this colossal project. In terms of both the strategic activities and of setting up the backbone structures, getting them rolling smoothly, things like coordinated data collection, how the various committees are working together. Darren talked about some of that work that's being done on the network community. As a reminder, the project's goal is 5,000 BIPOC homebuyers through 2025. We are working to support those folks into homeownership to narrow the racial homeownership and wealth gaps. One of the great things about this grant is so many of the existing programs are limited to 80% of AMI and below. This one is half can be over 150% of AMI. The remainder, the other half, are under 150% of AMI, with another half of those, or 25%, at 80% of AMI. So it gives us a lot more flexibility in this expensive market. It gives you those higher incomes that are needed to achieve homeownership. The planning group met last year, developed the implementation strategies. We call them the 4 Ps. There are 11 strategies that break out in terms of homebuyer preparation, homebuyer products, the partner network, And then policy, which is supply issues. How do we help, as people have talked about a little bit earlier today, how do we help increase the housing supply and take, some of the pressure, this price pressure out of our local market? So one thing to clarify about this project, that everything with this project are nearly all new activities. There are some existing things that will be scaled and made bigger, but mostly, sorry, I'm going to switch my notes now. The current system isn't working for BIPOC homebuyers and BIPOC homeownership, right? And so our strategies focus on how do we create a new ecosystem of homebuyer support and a new infrastructure to provide services in those 4 areas that we talked about. We're also, a lot of the existing services, as I said, serve a lower income group. And so whether it is outreach and information or counseling or financial products, they don't exist, or they're very, very small and not well known for the higher income groups. The primary partners, just to run through that again, the executive committee are the Housing Commission's Achievement Academy and First Time Homebuyer program that we've heard about today, the Reinvestment Task Force, and in particular, Council President Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp's office, who was involved in the planning process. Also the Urban League, LISC, MAC Project, Logan Heights CDC, and the Hispanic and Black Real Estate Professionals Organizations, NAREB and NAREP. Looking at the strategies again, under these 11 strategies that fall under the 4 Ps, we've prioritized the ones that have the longest runway in terms of creating this new system structure and or preparing potential homebuyers, especially if they need 6 to 18 months to work on their debt or raise their credit score. This has meant forming 2 work groups up front, a homebuyer preparation work group to address strategies 1 and 2, looking at support groups, mentorship, navigation, debt and financial counseling, and homebuyer education. The other work group is focused on creating this trusted vetted partners network that I mentioned talking in response to Sergio's question. That's strategies, I'm not looking at the slide, I think 7 and 8. One is to create and imagine the network. The other one is to actually stand it up with the training and vetting these professionals so that they are both familiar with, comfortable with, and eager to help first-time homebuyers who need more handholding. This has nothing to do, it's just any first-time homebuyer. So it's always easier to go for the bigger loan and the experienced quick person, right? So we want to, as Rick was talking about, smooth the way, do the realtor education to say, look, this term sheet is not as scary as it looks. This is how quickly these deals can close. Let's go do some deals. So these 2 work groups that I mentioned have been meeting. The Trusted Partners group is led by LISC, thank you. And the Homebuyer Preparation work group is co-led by the RTF and MAC project with additional support from Logan Heights CDC. In the meantime, while we do these long runway things, the executive committee is also pursuing 2 activities that can be done now and that don't have to wait for the larger infrastructure to be set up. And that was partly what Darren talked about when he said he's talking to and bringing together all of the different realtor groups. With the spring home buying season coming up, we're looking at coordinating what partners in the industry are doing in terms of buyer orientation, education programs, also programs for real estate professionals, educating them on these programs, working with first-time home buyers, dispelling myths for both professionals and home buyers. This, well, how much you need for a down payment. We hear this all the time in our focus groups in preparation for this showed it too. You don't need 20%. Myth busting 101. It's going to be a big part of our campaign, and that's what we're starting now. We'll support our partners in their outreach efforts around these programs. And then we're starting one outreach program on the fly right now. We found out from Money Management International, they notified us that they have several hundred homebuyer pre-purchase counseling slots available with the usual fee waived. There's no income cap, but they're only available till March 31st. This is a grant that they're running out. We want to get the word out. So we're talking to our partners, and I'm talking to you. In these sessions, they're phone-based. The homebuyer and the counselor go over the consumer's financials, their income, debts, expenses, They make a budget, they review their credit report, credit score, they can do the rent buy comparison, they discuss the home buying process. The session's customized to meet the consumer where they are in the process. It's available in English and Spanish directly through MMI counselors or through an interpreting service in 250 other languages. We are really excited about this, but we're not going to turn it down because like, oh, we don't have enough time, right? So we're completely doing it on the fly. We worked with MMI to develop a flyer and some simple communications, a kit that includes text for an email, ideas for social media posts. We're going to be sending these out to the Worth member organizations tomorrow. We'll post it on the RTF meeting webpage with this meeting's other documents. So that's www.sandiegortf.org/meetings. Scroll down to today's date. And we would love to get information. We would love help getting this information out to partners and residents. If you do share it, please drop me a line or CC me on that so we can do a little bit of tracking. If you have any questions, members, I'll have my contact information, and to the public and people watching the recording, my email is on the agenda, but it is Daisy C, DAISYC @sdhc.org. And information about the program in general, along with a press release from the initial launch, is on the Housing Commission's website. If you go to sdhc.org, at the top, you've got like home buyer programs, I think it is, or housing. And then underneath that is home buyer programs. You will also see a link for the home ownership equity project. Or if you just go to like, if you already know our down payment assistance page, go to that page, and on the sidebar, there will be something about the home ownership equity project. And that just will give an overview of what's going on. Are there any questions? Council member.
Yeah, I thank you so much. I have a question. And so first, a comment, that is awesome. I'm excited about it too. The last part about the confidential counseling and the accessibility to that. I think that my thought process around making that available for folks goes back to something that Rick and Darren in particular were talking about, which is people don't even think they're there yet, right? And so I know that it's sort of onerous in this day and time to do what we used to do back in the day, Daisy, is plan in-person events. But I think that the energy around those are quite successful. And what we were missing before was a sustainable mechanism that people could go to, which is what I think that this confidential counseling is. We had the events, but we didn't have the sustainability in the system, right? Now I think we're missing the event piece, those that allow folks to get together, get introductory explanation about the things that are out there, about the possibilities, and I think maybe we can work on that piece of it. So I guess my question is, what do you think about that, since we did do some of that work together previously?
Yes, we did. Those kinds of events and outreach will be a big part of the actual outreach, which we had phased for this program for once we have more to tell people about. But like I said, we're not going to turn down an opportunity just because we're not ready. We haven't built that out yet. But I think that's where the partner events that we talked about this spring, and we've already started to talk about the executive committee, we can really help them to be successful. That we can, especially now, just on the fly inventing, like, how are we going to push out information about the MMI opportunity? We're setting up the infrastructure right there, right? Mm-hmm. So now as we get additional things, we can push out that information through all of these networks, and folks will start to be activated and thinking about it that way. So it's a sort of a both and.
Yes, strategy. Absolutely. And we're available to help once we get there. I think we should, I would be open to doing something on a larger scale before the end of the year. Hopefully by that time we'll have something, more substantive to give to folks. But I think that that's the part that would really help. So we're already talking about it. Just want to make myself available, but thank you for all of the work.
Thank you. Thank you. And, to what you said too about, again, this is part of the myth busting, right? That have you actually run the numbers? We hear about how high the prices are, but maybe it's not impossible, right? And so you'll see when this little sort of communications kit that I ginned up, it has a couple of tweets in it that are conversation starters in that way, and that say it's not impossible. And again, once we get into a real life professional communications campaign, we'll have much more along those lines in terms of messaging. But for right now, this is one of the big things that we want to push. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Daisy, moving forward, I've actually done 8 of them in my district. And if you haven't actually done one, have your staff reach out to our staff. We can walk you through. We put a first homeowner buyers list, and it was exactly as you described. People showed up, didn't think they could afford it, and we got people placed in homes. So it's a great tool, but we learned a lot along the way. First event, 3 people showed up, so we had to change our strategy. So if you're looking at doing it at the end of the year, please reach out to us. We can save you some time if you haven't done one before.
That's a great resource. We did one for the RTF a couple of years ago. Sergio also helped with that. I think it's a bandwidth issue. So we need to find someone to do it and support them, because it turns out this is a really, really big, complicated project. And so that's why we're sequencing things. But this is knowing what's already been done so that we can learn from each other. And if you already have like list templates, things like that, that is very good.
Awesome. Do we have any more questions from RTF members? And Daisy, I don't mean to rush you. I think that you're done. Are you finished?
I am finished.
Okay.
I do see public comment.
Well, I want to make sure all the RTF members have had their questions answered, and then let's go to public comment.
We have one public comment. Jeff, I am unmuting you. You can go ahead and provide your public comment now.
Great. And this time I'll just speak as myself as an individual. So, Jeff Huter. One of the things that I'm interested, you kind of have a grant component to this program, but have you ever looked at something like co-investing? Because, there might be private money that would be available that wants to invest in real estate. And one of the hardest things about getting into a home is saving faster than house prices go up in order to get a down payment. And something like co-investing might provide a mechanism. Obviously there's a downside because some of the equity would be given up in that mechanism, but at least somebody's sort of getting into the process. So, it's 80% of the pie, is still 80% of the pie, so to speak, or however it would work out. Anyway, just a concept to throw out there. I'm not exactly how it would work, but I have seen that there's actually, startup companies that specialize in this, and it might be something to sort of bring into kind of the equity environment as kind of a social investing platform.
Great, thank you. Yes, I've seen those models too, and it's something the executive committee can throw into the pot because we need to try every approach.
Okay.
Are we done with all the public comment? If that's the case, that concludes all the items in today's agenda. Thank you all for your participation today. I appreciate the work that each of you do on the task force. The guest speakers did an outstanding job, and we appreciate their input. With that, we adjourn at 3:20. And thank you all again. Thanks for taking the time. The work you do is so important to our community, and I really appreciate on a personal level how you go the extra mile to lift people in our community. Thank you all. And Monica, you're the bomb, always covering my back and making me look good. So thank you.
Of course, sir. Anytime. And thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.